Welcome to our 30th season of Offsides, BUTV10's only professional sports talk show. I'm Monet Oda.
And I'm Haley Alvarez-Lauto. To kick things off, our host Daniel Multz will break down everything from Super Bowl 56 with Mae-Claire Sabin.
Then he'll be joined by Alexa Podalsky to discuss the MLB Lockout and its impact on the start of the 2022 MLB season.
Then Seth Helman will discuss some of the biggest controversies during the start of the Beijing Winter Olympics.
And finally, we'll turn to Tyler Carroll as he examines the tidal wave of scandals currently hitting the NFL.
All this and more, Offside starts right now.
Today we're kicking things off talking about Super Bowl 56. The LA Rams took down the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 in the NFL's finale this past Sunday, with Rams head coach Sean McVay and his talent-laced squad finally getting the rings they've been seeking for the past few years. Mae-Claire Sabin is here to take us through the biggest player performances and biggest moments of the game. So, Mae-Claire, who did you initially have winning the Super Bowl, and tell me which team do you think brought that extra edge with them to the game?
Absolutely. I had the Rams winning the Super Bowl. I think everyone had a lot of faith in the Stafford Cup connection going into Sunday night, and they definitely came out hot. Aaron Donald, who was also three-time Defensive Player of the Year, had a truly impressive season, and I really thought he would be lethal for the Rams during Super Bowl 56. All that being said, the Bengals absolutely brought a remarkable game. Playoff underdogs, the fact they even made it this far was a true testament to Joe Burrow's drive and willingness to leave it all out there. If only the Bengals defense had lasted a little bit longer, because Burrow's sacks absolutely killed him and the team altogether. When the Bengals offense was making plays, they made those plays, but the sacks were deadly and the Bengals ultimately just couldn't escape Donald's final sack that left them unable to bring the ball up the field for a field goal attempt from Evan McPherson.
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting sacked 70 times throughout the year between regular and postseason, it's amazing Burrow and the Bengals clicked like they did. But talk to me a little bit more about Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Offensive Player of the Year, an unbelievable performance in the game itself. Tell me more about that and what you think that performance means for him.
Oh, absolutely. So incredibly well-deserved. Kupp's story itself is just awe-inspiring. He had no offers until 3 weeks after his senior season and was a third-round draft pick out of Eastern Washington University. His wife, Anna Krosky, worked 2 jobs during college so Kupp could focus on his football career. During the Super Bowl, Kupp was the Rams' only consistently viable option on offense after Odell Beckham Jr. left with a knee injury. Kupp was the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year and ended the night with 8 catches for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. While his game-winning 1-yard touchdown sealed the deal for the Rams, I think Kupp's biggest moment was actually a 7-yard run on 4th and 1. They really kept the Rams going. I just hope he and his family had an amazing time celebrating.
I hope so too. And, 90 yards, 90-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 catches, that seemed like what he did week in, week out, which is how you end up with over 2,400 total yards by the time this season is over. But we know about Cooper Kupp. Tell me who you think is one of the most underrated players in the game. We know the star-packed lineups that we had on both sides. Who was the most underrated player in the Super Bowl this year?
Honestly, a large part of me wants to say Evan McPherson. I mean, I kind of just love the guy. He's a 21-year-old rookie, 5th-round pick out of Florida that went on to tie the Colts' Adam Vinatieri's 2007 record for the most field goals made in a single postseason. McPherson's 52-yard field goal pushed the Bengals past the Tennessee Titans in the divisional, and his kick at the end of the Bengals-Chiefs game sent his team to the Super Bowl. McPherson is calm under pressure and adored by all his teammates. I laughed so hard when the camera panned to him watching the Super Bowl halftime show instead of joining his teammates in the locker room, which obviously didn't even faze him as he went on to make a 38-yarder in the 3rd quarter. McPherson's got such a bright future ahead of him.
It's such an underratedly important position that if you have a solid kicker like Vinatieri with the Colts and Patriots, like Justin Tucker and others, then you're guaranteed almost to get 3 points or that extra point every time the kicker is out there.
It's the 1 3 points that make the game, not the touchdown.
Absolutely. We've seen that all the time with all different kickers. Playoff games, regular season games, it doesn't always come down to the quarterback and the skill position players. It more often than not comes down to that kicker.
Yeah.
So lastly, take me through a little bit more about that last play where Aaron Donald gets a hold of Joe Burrow, 4th and 1. They've got everything on the line there. Take me through that play and how that ended up sealing it for the Rams.
Aaron Donald's game-winning play on the 49-yard line that brought Burrow to the ground on their final scoring drive was nothing short of amazing. You just had to root for him in that moment. When he held up his hand and pointed to the ring he was about to get, it must have been heartbreaking for Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase, who was wide open when Donald sacked Burrow. He got in around Rams quarterback Jalen Ramsey on a go route and was on the 30-yard line waiting for Burrow's pass that never came. Donald pressured Burrow on the throw a mere 2.2 seconds after the snap. He had no time to look down the field for Chase. That proves how a game can be decided in seconds and why without a strong O-line, plays like that at the most important time are easier to execute for defenders.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, 70 sacks on the year. We knew the Bengals' offensive line was a question mark all season, and we knew it would stay that way once they decided to take Jamar Chase with the 5th overall pick in the draft. Now, I don't think anybody's saying that that was the wrong selection, but the fact of the matter is the Bengals' glaring weakness ended up being the reason that they couldn't get that last playoff and maybe cling to whatever hope they had left to get an Evan McPherson field goal to tie the game and send it to OT. But Mae-Claire, thank you so much. Loved hearing all that about the Super Bowl. Now we'll turn to Alexa Podalsky and everything she's got to say on the current state of the MLB lockout. So, Alexa, the league has been in a standstill for over 2 months now. Can you briefly take us through that time and why concerns are growing about the 2022 season starting on time?
Well, Daniel, this all started when the most recent 5-year collective bargaining agreement expired on December 1st. Disagreements between the players and the owners reached a boiling point in the last 2 years, and the lockout was meant to jumpstart negotiations. However, both sides have only been able to agree on implementing a universal designated hitter. That's nice, but there are far more important issues where they've only scratched the surface. And with spring training still scheduled to start on February 26th, that seems impossible since teams can't sign players, make trades, or even play without a new agreement.
Yeah, it really is crazy that this standstill has lasted for so long and is affecting everyone. Now, tell me a little bit more about why these two sides can't make any progress here, because they're barely meeting, and it's just mind-boggling that so much time has passed and so little progress is made.
This problem dates back to last August after the MLB proposed adding a salary floor of $100 million and lowering the luxury tax threshold in place of a salary cap. This proposal was similar to numbers we have seen back in 2012, so obviously the players' union weren't happy with it since the players' income would go backwards in a time where most Americans were looking for a salary increase. The union has been seeking more control over their contracts and a raise in minimum salary from $570,000 to $750,000. Commissioner Robert Manfred said that the vision was simply not a viable option back in December, and it seems as if neither side is eager on reaching an agreement. The MLB did recently come up with a 130-page proposal at their last meeting on February 12th, but with no plan for another bargaining session, compromise appears to be distant.
You know, to me, the wackiest part of this whole ordeal is that the players and owners, as I said, they're not meeting every day or for hours a day to end this lockout. There just doesn't seem to be that urgency to settle this and get back to playing baseball. So now let's dive a little bit into next season and tell me, where do things stand in terms of 2022? What realistically are the prospects of the season still starting on time?
The two sides might be talking to each other, but there hasn't been anywhere near enough progress to save everyone from some form of delay. What fans should focus on is the impact of the delay, as it seems to be imminent. Will the season be shortened to accommodate the playoffs starting in October, or will they play on into November? If the MLB ends up cutting games from the schedule, will ticket holders lose value on season tickets? And since contracts still haven't been signed, can we expect to see unexpected movement for free agents? And how does the league maintain respect with fans and on the world stage when it seems like the owners and players are speaking different languages during this lockout? All these questions will go unanswered for now, but fans should keep an open mind and expect to see adjustments that will differ from the norm.
Now, I just got to say, I totally disagree about fans needing to expect adjustments from normal this coming season. With attendance numbers continuing to plummet and the league still unable to speed the game up and becoming so centered around home runs, walks, and strikeouts that the product on the field is getting boring and no one wants to come to the stadium to watch it. And that's why fans need to show how outraged they are about everything. But as of now, where everything stands with the MLB lockout, we're really just going to have to wait and see. Alexa, we really appreciate the insight tonight. And now we're on to an even more controversial issue, the start of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Seth Helman will have all that for us coming up next. Now we're on to the global stage and the 2022 Winter Olympics currently being held in Beijing. Seth Helman's here to talk about all that with us. And Seth, let's start off with the current state of the hockey tournaments, where on the men's side, NHL players barred from going to the competition. Tell us about that.
Well, the NHL went as far as to block out about a 1-month period in February where there weren't going to be any games scheduled so that players could go over and play in the Olympics. Now, they weren't allowed to go and play in the last Olympics, so a lot of these guys were really chomping at the bit. Brad Marchand specifically was really, really upset when they announced that due to COVID restrictions, they didn't want to send players over there. And he called it a selfish move. He believed that the NHL refusing to do a taxi squad so that teams could continue to play games due to COVID cancellations like they had done before was a form of them trying to put more money in the pockets of the owners as opposed to acting out of the best interest of the players. So it's certainly not a popular decision amongst the NHLers, and I guarantee you that people who were really excited to watch, like I was, were really disappointed.
Yeah, Brad Marchand, fiery player for the Boston Bruins. When he's speaking out like that, he speaks his mind just like he does out on the ice. Definitely tough to see, but it also is good news for all the college hockey players from all over the United States in NCAA Division I. Like here at BU, our goaltender Drew Comesso, among others there representing their schools at the Olympics. Definitely a positive for them. But let's move on to the state of the living conditions for the Olympic athletes that are there. I feel like this is something that comes up in so many different Olympic games, and now that it's in China, tell us a little bit about what you've seen at how good or bad the living conditions have been for the athletes in their Olympic village.
Well, I haven't seen anything quite as bad as the cardboard beds that we saw in Tokyo. But as far as the food situation goes, it sounds like it's pretty abysmal. We're getting reports that there's not a lot of protein available. There aren't any hot meals for some of the teams. There was one Russian athlete who was concerned that she wasn't getting enough food, was feeling terrible, sick to her stomach every single day, crying every day, and has lost, from what I can tell, a really dangerous amount of weight. And so you're sitting here and you're seeing all of these professional athletes who need to be fueling their bodies, and it just doesn't seem like the adequate amount of sustenance is available. Now, the United States was smart. They actually packed pasta for all of their athletes so that they could cook it in their own rooms. But it sounds like it's even worse for the people who get thrown in isolation who test positive. They don't even have access to gym equipment to stay in shape in the event that they get cleared to play in their event after testing positive.
That's just mind-blowing. Between the lack of food and the lack of facilities, these are professional athletes, the best athletes in the world in the sports they play for the countries that they represent. That's just crazy to me that China wouldn't make sure that things were prepared so that if someone tests positive for COVID-19, they can be prepared to be in as good a shape as they can be when they're ready to get back out on the ice or on the ski slopes, whatever the case may be. But now let's move on to a couple topics here related to the United States specifically. Famously, at the opening ceremony, about 1/3 of the U.S. Olympic delegation did not go to the opening ceremony. What do you think is the symbolism behind that for why as many as 80 American athletes weren't even there?
I think there's no symbolism at all. I mean, you've seen it before in the past. There are plenty of players who just simply didn't go because they were more focused on preparing for whatever their event was. I was reading earlier today that 80% of the total athletes for the United States ended up going, and that's a near record because a lot of athletes just don't want to take the time to spend that hour plus 2 hours at the opening ceremony when they could be getting sleep, getting an extra workout in, getting an extra meal in. It doesn't seem to me right now like any of the athletes are really all that concerned about anything that could be going on surrounding the Olympics, and that to me didn't seem like something where it was an open protest.
Yeah, I hear that. I just feel like it's so... I disagree a little bit because I think for something like the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games, this happens once every 4 years. For some of these athletes, it might be the only time they get to go. For some, it might be their first, some their last. And 80 just seems like a big number from a delegation to not go. But let's close out with one other serious topic about the opening ceremony. We know that one of the biggest political controversies on the global stage right now is the genocide that the Chinese government is committing against Uyghur Muslims in various provinces throughout the country, and a Uyghur Muslim person was sent out to light the torch to kick off the Olympic Games. To me, that just seemed like political grandstanding as they tried to demonstrate that they're not doing what we know that they are doing to these people. But what did you see from it?
Well, the country of China maintains that these what are called labor camps by much of the Western world are actually re-education camps. And what they're trying to do, again, this is according to what the country of China is saying, is they're trying to limit Islamist extremism to try to keep people safe. Now, if you're going to believe that, fine, but I don't know how many people, especially in America, are inclined to believe that, especially when they just randomly throw out a Uyghur Muslim to light the torch as if, hey, it's all fine and dandy. And what's really interesting to me is how the country has gone about the games as a whole. We're seeing some American athletes who are going over and playing for China as opposed to playing for the Americans. Now, in the case of Jeremy Smith, who's the starting goaltender for the Chinese ice hockey team, it makes sense because he probably wouldn't have made the American ice hockey team anyway. Now, keep in mind, this is probably based on months ago when we were expecting NHL players to be playing in this, and he's definitely not of that caliber. But even now, you see the likes of Drew Commesso and how well he's been playing. You don't expect a guy like Jeremy Smith to start on the American team. But then you look at someone like Aileen Gu, who won a gold medal. Like, she's outstanding. She's one of the best at her sport, and she made that conscious decision to go. Now, China allegedly has a long-standing policy. When you read through their laws, it says that you can't have dual citizenship. But the Olympic Committee allows for athletes with dual citizenship to pick whichever country they want to work for. Now, Jeremy Smith said to ESPN that his condition to China for playing on their hockey team was not renouncing his American citizenship. But Aileen Gu hasn't really given us any clear information. Now, there are documents that the United States government sends out every couple of quarters that gives the information as to the names of who has renounced their American citizenship, and as of yet, she hasn't shown up on that. So right now, it's very interesting as to, why would someone like Gu, who's at the top of her sport, who would have made the American team probably no matter what, what's incentivizing her to go and play for a country right now that's under so much heat from the international world? I mean, the United States put a diplomatic boycott on this Olympics. They didn't send any diplomats out with the athletes. So it's very interesting to me to kind of hypothesize what China might be doing to get these athletes to say, hey, I'm an American, but I'm going to go play in China.
The amount of geopolitical confusion and just terrible conditions, everything surrounding these games, you mentioned it, everything just seems weird. This is the Winter Olympics. This is supposed to be one of the most important, celebrated, enjoyable athletic events of 2022. This is something that only happens once every 4 years. And the environment in Beijing right now seems like it's anything but for the athletes, for the fans, and for a lot of the people of China. Seth, thank you so much for taking us through a lot of the big points regarding the 2022 Winter Olympics. And now we're on to Tyler Carroll as he'll take us through what's going on. The tidal wave of controversies hitting the National Football League right now, and not the ones on the field, everything going on there right now off the field. Ty, take it away.
On February 1st, Brian Flores filed a lawsuit against the NFL and some of its teams for racially discriminatory hiring practices, alleging that certain teams gave him phony job interviews to satisfy the controversial Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule requires teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching and senior football operations positions. Flores' case hinges on the New York Giants' interview process. 3 days before his January 27th interview this offseason, Patriots head coach Bill Belichick texted Flores, congratulating him for getting the job and saying that he heard from Buffalo and the Giants that, quote, you are their guy. After Flores clarified the situation, it was clear that Belichick had accidentally texted Brian Flores instead of Brian Daboll, who was hired on January 28th, only 1 day after Flores' interview. On February 3rd, the Giants denied these allegations with an official statement in which they said, quote, the allegation that the Giants' decision had been made prior to Friday evening, January 28th is false, and to base that allegation on a text exchange with Bill Belichick in which he ultimately states he thinks Brian Daboll would get the job is irresponsible. The text exchange occurred the day before Coach Daboll's in-person interview even took place. Giants ownership would never hire a head coach based only on a 20-minute Zoom interview, which is all that Mr. Daboll had at that point. The lawsuit also describes a situation in 2019 while Flores was still the head coach of the Dolphins. The official court statement reads, quote, indeed, during the 2019 season, Miami's owner Stephen Ross told Mr. Flores that he would pay him $100,000 for every loss, and the team's general manager Chris Greer told Mr. Flores that Steve was mad that Mr. Flores' success in winning games that year was compromising the team's draft position. Earlier this week, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell sent a memo to all teams regarding Flores' allegations of both racial discrimination and being paid to lose games. According to Goodell, the league is retaining outside experts to reevaluate its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Quote, we also take seriously any issue relating to game integrity. This matter will be reviewed thoroughly and independently, Goodell said. If the allegation about being offered $100,000 per loss is true, it would be the most devastating sports scandal since the Black Sox. Speaking nothing of the basic decency behind throwing games, sports gambling is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is rapidly expanding into online platforms that rake in obscene amounts of revenue for the league. All of that money is contingent upon the NFL providing a fair, unadulterated contest upon which to bet. As we've seen in the past, it takes more than a slight headache for the league to get rid of an owner, but if Goodell's independent investigation turns up any evidence that coaches were paid to lose, I don't think there's any choice except for forcing those owners to sell. As for Brian Flores, he recognized that it is unlikely that any team hires him now surrounding the lawsuit, but will still continue his case. As for why, Flores said, quote, "We need change. We need to change the hearts and minds of the people making those decisions." Monet and Haley, back to you.
Thanks, Tyler. That's all we have for this episode of Offsides. If you're interested in joining our team, please email us at offsides@butv10.com.
Also, be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Offsides10.
On behalf of our entire cast and crew, thanks for watching and have a great night.